the illnesses, the disorders that I have allow me to write those negative mental situations in a brutal detail so people can actually see what it's really like. The writing in my head never stops. When I go down to actually start typing, it really only takes me like 6 or 7 weeks to finish a book from cover to cover, a normal book. Like a lot of my books, I hope that I help raise awareness for things like mental health crisis, suicidal ideations, things like that. That stuff's all in the books. And it's in the books in such an organic fashion that when you get to those terrible, horrific things, it makes total sense that the book goes in that direction. But I don't write every day because I can't handle it. I can't handle writing and then being a husband and father and a normal member of society at the same time. I can't, because the writing brings up too many things. So that's why I write in such short bursts, because I'm fortunate that I live in a large property with multiple adults. So I have people that can watch out for me. So, and in all seriousness, when I'm ready to sit down and write seriously, I tell the other people in my family that's what I'm doing, because they know that I'm going to be cut off from the outside world. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to sleep. I'm potentially a danger to myself, to be completely honest, while I'm writing. So I've got these other adults that can keep peeking in on me, force feeding me. It's hard to explain if you're not somebody that suffers from this kind of torment, but I cannot do both at the same time, no.
Welcome to Little Wild Experiences, a podcast where we explore one question: what experiences shape who we become? I'm your host, Zhara. Today I'm joined by Richard Spegal, author of the Eternal Night series and the Wolves and the Ravens trilogy. Richard's journey is one of transformation from serving in the 82nd Airborne Division and the Pennsylvania National Guard to becoming a published author. His experience have shaped not only the stories he tells, but the person he has become. Life has a way of closing chapters we thought will define us forever. And sometimes those endings lead us to discover entirely new parts of ourselves. Richard, welcome to Little Wild Experiences. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I did some research. I know you're an author now. Fiction, that's your expertise. But I want to know a little bit more of your background. Who was Richard before this author identity?
Well, I've been actually writing since high school. It was just like a little hobby of mine before joining the military, like you mentioned. And then after the active duty service, I, got married, started to do a family. And then I decided I wanted to go back into the military. And that's why I chose the National Guard, because it was a nice little compromise between military and civilian life. I didn't write that much during that time because I didn't have time for it. Because, you got to work, you got to put food on the table, and writing was not putting food on the table. So I just kind of didn't do it. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to give it a shot. And then once I opened that can of worms, I couldn't close it back up again. And then after I was medically discharged, well, I decided to do it full time.
What led you to the military, though? What was it? Was something that you wanted to do, or
my father,
it was just illness?
Yeah, my father's in the military, so joining the military was never really a question. I always knew I was going to do it.
So was it just, so it's kind of like generational thing in the family?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's something that you wanted to do, or it was more because it was a status quo in your family, like everyone had to do it?
Well, I did want to do it. It's not like I felt forced or anything, but coming from a military family gives you like a perspective. There's two extremes. If you come from a serious military family, you either love the military and want to join, or you hate the military and you'll stay away from it. There's no middle ground when you're in a family like that.
Right, yeah. But so you said, when did you start out? So everything started when you were in high school. That's what you said, right? You started writing.
Yeah.
So basically you've been writing this trilogy since during that time, or is it something
that was just like short stories and stuff like that. I was really just doing it to amuse myself because I was bored in class. And if you're writing, the teacher assumes you're taking notes. So I would just write stuff to amuse myself. The actual books I have published, I didn't write those books until much later.
Okay, got it. I do have an interesting question for you, because we identity for me is a huge topic in the show, and I found really fascinating when people switch careers after a long time. And I think we attach our identity to our jobs, to fatherhood, to certain things that, this is who we are, but it is actually who we are. So I think, was becoming an author a completely new identity for you, or were you returning in something that had always been inside you?
I think that's a good question, especially when you mention it like in terms of identity. I've always considered myself to be a writer, and I'm biased because it's me. I've always considered myself to be a good writer, but I never considered myself to be an author until
Hmm.
relatively recently, because when I actually started having things published, that's when that identity kind of clarified from in general writing to actually being an author of books.
Was a really difficult transition for you, because I mean, being in the military, I mean, it's a lot of discipline. You dedicate your life to it, right? You said you had a family, so there was a well established life, and then all of a sudden become an author.
Yeah, that was actually a very difficult transition for me because I had always planned on staying in the military. I used to joke about it. I was going to stay in the military until they had to wheel out my dusty bones because of how old I was. But I had a small injury that sent in 2022 that sent me to what's called the Soldier Recovery Unit. So I
Mm.
was actually in like a hospital unit in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and while I was there, I started talking to some people, and some mental illness and behavioral problems came up, and which led to a medical discharge, which I had not expected. I planned
Mm.
on going to this place for like 3 months. I ended up being there for over 2 years, and they medically discharged me. So it was a really hard transition to realize like I'm not in the military anymore.
So how do you cope with that? I mean, as I said, like we identify, like, there is a lot of people out there that they have this job for a long time, and they identify so much with it, and it becomes their life, and including families, sometimes people get divorced and it's just completely disrupts their routines. How do you how do you cope with that? And then did you discover, well, this is who I am? This is, or just walk me through that transition, because I think it's important for people to know from someone who actually has gone through.
My writing is basically how I cope. That's kind of like my outlet for everything, all of this stuff in my head and things like that. And now that I'm not in the military anymore, and now that I'm not working a normal civilian job anymore, there's no more of those professional distractions. So all of the nonsense in my head that turns into stories kind of like takes over everything. And that's what I use to cope.
So tell me a little bit more about your books. So, I mean, I know there's fiction. There is a trilogy. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you wrote in there? What is the kind of theme in it?
The genres range from dark fantasy, romance, modern fiction, science fiction, action. It's really hard to narrow down a specific genre. The Eternal Night series is more of a taking place in the normal modern world, and that transitions into science fiction. That's the series that centers around the family of vampires. And then Wolves and Ravens is dark fantasy, because it's fantasy, but it's considered dark fantasy because of how, I would say, brutal it gets.
Hmm. How do you come up with those? I mean, you must have a lot of imagination. How do you come up with these stories? Where do you get them from? There is something that inspire you to in real life.
Honestly, the ideas kind of just come to me. The disorders that got me kicked out of the military and make it hard for me to ground myself in normal life are actually the same disorders that cause all of this stuff in my head. Like, as you say, like, it's fiction, but to me it's not fiction. To me, I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, I'm tormented by it, and that's what helps the books be so realistic, because I'm watching it happen.
So while you write, you actually leave the story as you write. That's what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yeah,
That's great.
I don't outline books. I used to. I used to outline my books, but then when I would write the book, it would just take off and go in a different direction. So I just sort of I'm a reporter. I watch and hear what the characters do, and then I just write down what I see and hear.
But there is something about your struggles in life that, I mean, because that imagination comes from somewhere. Don't you think? Like we use some sort of reality or, real life to kind of come up with these stories and these characters.
Well, it comes from insanity. A lot of or not authors necessarily, but a lot of artists over the centuries shared one thing in common, that they were tormented by something, which allowed them to either paint, write, or sculpt something that other people just did not have the capability of seeing or hearing. And then it didn't help them, and most of them died terrible deaths. But that's kind of the category how I would describe myself, because it is tormenting. My my activities and my experiences in life help with some of the details. Like my
Mm.
military experience helps me to make certain things more realistic. Like I can get into real detail with the action, which makes it more fun to read. The illnesses, the disorders that I have allow me to write those negative mental situations in a brutal detail, so people can actually see what it's really like. I have a lot of experience with other individuals that suffer from different things, so I can use their experience as well. It's all about resulting in overall realism and organic growth.
You think this soldier life that you have was, gave you some ideas for those stories, things that you've
I
seen
wouldn't
or you
say
experienced?
I wouldn't say ideas for the stories themselves, because that just sort of like pops into my head. It's like I said, it helps me make them more realistic, like especially in Eternal Nights, because it's set in the modern world. So when they're fighting, I can write the names of weapons, the names of equipment, how the fighting is happening. I
Mm.
can do that in a greater detail than most people can, which, like I said, I think that makes it more enjoyable to read an action scene in that kind of detail.
But I think that's amazing what you said. You said that you use, traumas and experiences and things that kind of disturb us in life and make our lives complex in a way. And then you using a positive way to release all of that, which is creating these stories and these books is, I mean, I think that's the takeaway right here. And people should, see it because, we can take the wrong path. We could do the wrong thing. I mean, I think in a sense what you have said, humans need this a little bit of fantasy. Why do humans need stories as an author?
Escapism. And escapism sometimes is spoken like it's a bad thing, but it's not. I mean, people who escape 23 or 24 hours a day, that's a bad thing. But everybody wants a little bit of a break. The main reason you watch television, watch movies, read books, listen to music, the only main reason you're doing all of those things is to escape or distract yourself. And that's perfectly fine. And when you have a book that is completely realistic and completely organic, it ends up being totally immersive. So it's like you're actually literally in this other world, and it's a whole different experience than, say, reading something that you can tell is fake or watching something that you can tell is fake.
Which you're doing in a very productive way, in a very amazing way. Instead of, I think that's when it comes to like people scrolling on social media and then trying to do things and then, escaping in that digital world. Yeah. Why fantasy specifically for you? Have you ever thought about a memoir?
Well, fantasy was just something I wanted to. I wrote a short story a long time ago for my wife. She wasn't my wife yet. I had it translated into Chinese, and I used that to kind of attract her, and it worked because she married me. And that was like 13 years ago. It was a 6-page story called The Wolf and the Raven, and I always wanted to do something more with that. So I had to take a break from Eternal Nights because I needed to do more research for the science fiction aspect of it. And then I started working on that trilogy, and I ended up having so much fun writing fantasy that I finished all 3 books in like a year and a half, and I really
Wow, that's
enjoyed it.
pretty fast. That's a very short period of time for a trilogy. I mean, I would expect like 3 years or more. I mean, that's what I hear. I mean, I don't write fantasy, but I think it's yeah, it takes a while. It's
I've been
not something to
told
do overnight.
I've been told that the average for a traditional author is 12 to 14 months. A lot of that has to do with the publishing companies that they work with, because sometimes they set the schedule. For me, the writing in my head never stops. When I go down to actually start typing, it really only takes me like 6 or 7 weeks to finish a book from cover to cover, a normal book. One Broken Angel, the conclusion to Wolves and Ravens,
Mm.
that actually took me an entire year. But usually it's very, very fast when I get to the, writing.
No, I guess when you like something, you just get into it.
Yeah, because when I start, it's a cycle that I'm stuck in. I have these illnesses that are very negative, but a lot of the energy and insanity is focused on my writing. So my writing is an outlet, but at the same time, it makes things worse. So when I start
Mhm.
writing, I actually lose control. And that's one of the reasons why it happens so quickly.
Right. I want to go back a little bit of what you said before, which is really interesting. We write to escape, right? So do we read fiction to escape reality in a sense, or can fiction actually help us understand reality?
Definitely. Like I'm going for both things. Like I said before, you're definitely wanting to escape because if you didn't, and you might not think about it that way, but that's exactly what you're doing. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not negative. That's actually a very healthy thing to do. But when you write as organic as I do, and it's completely realistic and immersive, you do start learning things because it's another honest reality. And you see and you even start to imagine and hear things that are completely realistic, and then you can learn about that. Like a lot of my books, I hope that I help raise awareness for things like mental health crisis, suicidal ideations, things like that. That stuff's all in the books, and it's in the books in such an organic fashion that when you get to those terrible horrific things, it makes total sense that the book goes in that direction. And as a reader, if you don't have experience with those things, you could actually really learn a lot.
Right. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like it has to, like you said, you're releasing all these traumas in a story, which is a beautiful thing of doing that. I find it therapeutic. Your stories deal with conflict. I did my research there. So I mean, choices and darker aspects of human nature, right? So how much of that comes from things you experience or observe in real life? I don't know if you can give me a character that you can think of, or something that kind of, emphasizes that.
Well, in general, it's kind of what everybody experiences. Everybody experiences good things and bad things. I mean, your bad things might just be you being irritated because you got hit too many red lights. Your bad things could be something like really deep and dark and emotional. Everybody has both sides. But in most stories, whether it's visual media or literary media, most stories don't show both sides. They only show the positive aspects of the good guy characters and the negative aspects of the bad guy characters. But you're cutting out half of the story. The conflict goes in the direction it goes, and even if like the good guys win and save the world or whatever, they're still suffering from the loss and the stress. And the negative side, they might be evil in the book, but they have positive qualities as well. And I hope people see that correlation between conflict in the story and how realistic it is versus conflict with an individual in the real world.
Right. Do you can anticipate the ending when you're writing, or is that something that just comes along as you write?
I have to because the books are not standalone. Since everything I write is part of a series, because I said before I don't outline the books, and that's true. But I do have to have a small outline for the ending because the book has to end in a certain way to set up the next book because it's a series. So I
Because
kind
it's
of
serious,
do
right?
have, yeah, I do have an idea. Now, the way the characters get there is as much a surprise to me as it is to the audience. And maybe the ending turns out like a little bit different or something. But for the most part, I do have that idea in mind.
I am really fascinated. It really inspired me when I see people that go through a long career. I mean, what you're doing is amazing. You have a trilogy. I mean, we can have a book, a couple of books, but a trilogy is work. And I just want the audience to understand writing books is not something that you can sit down and then you write a couple of pages and then that's it. It takes a lot of thinking, experiences, right? Because, the stories come from somewhere. And after that is editing and all of that. And, having to publish it. What has writing told you about yourself What do you think is the best lesson you have learned?
That I'm insane. My
Gosh.
writing has taught me that I'm insane because I don't think a normal person would be writing these things.
Oh, Lord. I mean, well, I mean, there are many writers out there that I really admire because it just takes so much imagination to come up with something so dark and despicable. And I mean, is there any favorite of your stories that you think or that had that has been the darkest one, the one that you felt like I'm not sure if I'm gonna publish this, or I don't know if I'm gonna be judged by writing this story and let people read this.
That's a tough call because most of the books do have, well, all of the books go into that stress in those darker areas. But if I had to pick one, I would say, of the ones that are in print right now, I would say Broken Angel, the one that I said took me a year to write. It's actually the shortest book, technically, of all the books I've written, the conclusion of the Wolves and Ravens trilogy. That was very hard to write because of how dark it is. It's the culmination of everything that's been happening. So like the entire book is dark. Like from the prologue up until maybe the final chapter, the whole thing is horrific because of what's actually happening and what's been leading up to it. And from the two prior books, they have some nasty, brutal incidents as well. But Broken Angel, I had to stop writing. Like I would be writing a scene or I'd be writing a chapter, and it goes so far and it hits so close to home that I would actually get upset. Like I could not handle my own writing, so I would have to stop for like a month
Oh my gosh,
before I would go
seriously?
back to it. Yeah. And when I was done and I read it, like I was so happy. Like it was beautiful. It was everything that I wanted to put into that book. But of the six I have published, I would say that that is the darkest.
Is that something, writing something like that, that reader who is coming out with all the stories, this dark, things that comes to your mind, they just stay in that book when you write, when you're the author. They're completely separate of that reader that's, the day to day, the routines, the father, the husband. Could you completely separate those things? They kind of overlap in those identities.
No, they overlap. They overlap entirely. That's why it's very hard for me to do both at the same time. Like I don't write every day because I can't handle it. I can't handle writing and then being a husband and father and a normal member of society at the same time. I can't because the writing brings up too many things. So that's why I write in such short bursts because I'm fortunate that I live in a large property with multiple adults. So I have people that can watch out for me. So, and in all seriousness, when I'm ready to sit down and write seriously, I tell the other people in my family that's what I'm doing because they know that I'm going to be cut off from the outside world. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to sleep. I'm potentially a danger to myself, to be completely honest,
My
while I'm
God.
writing. So I've got these other adults that can keep peeking in on me, force feeding me. And it's hard to explain if you're not somebody that suffers from this kind of torment. But I cannot do both at the same time. No.
I mean, how long do you stay in that stage, in that state of mind?
Like I said before, it averages 6 to 7 weeks. And since I'm writing science fiction now, the books tend to be longer. Science fiction books are always longer, so it might take me more time. I have a couple more written that haven't been published yet, so I've been kind of taking a long break.
What do you think is a positive of all of this? Because I mean, what you're describing to me is just mind blowing. I write too, but again, I don't do fantasy, so probably that's a completely different scenario. How do you cope with this? Is that something do you think that has a really positive side that makes you a better person every day?
And that's the funny thing in my situation. And like to answer that question honestly, it's the opposite, and that's my problem. Writing is my favorite thing to do, and it's actually a concern that I work with my doctors because it's like this is this amazing talent you have, but utilizing this talent is worsening your condition. So it's tough to find that fine line. Like the more I write, the more serious I write, the further removed I am from reality. But I can't stop doing it. So it's just one of those things and that's why I mentioned like artists in the past. That's how they
Yeah.
met such terrible ends, because they were tormented. They had an outlet, but the outlet made it worse. Other people were enjoying what they did, but they kept suffering until the end. So it's hard to explain.
It is very complex. I mean, but you enjoy it at the end of the day. It,
Yeah,
I'm a,
I'll pay
it's
for it eventually, but I do enjoy it.
that comes to my next question. So how do you, because this is very difficult for a lot of people to, we have a lot of people out there with amazing talent. They're trying to transition from a full-time job to this dream. I mean, we do have musicians, we do, authors as yourself. We do have so many people out there with so much talent, and they get cut off in this full-time position, this day-to-day life, this I had to pay bills, this I had to do this, I had to support family, I have responsibilities. And how do they transition from that to actually do what they want to do in life? And from your perspective and from your own experiences, how can you, deliver that message?
It is extraordinarily difficult if you do not have the right connections or any kind of individual fame. And that's in all forms of media. It's the way it's been for the last decade or so. Like, if you don't know the right person, the traditional companies are cut off from you. They won't talk to you. It doesn't matter what you can do or how good you are. You just, the access just is not there. So since you have to do it on your own as an independent, you better have some serious cash to back yourself up. So that's why so many of them keep those full-time jobs. They have to. Like, maybe they're getting a little bit of traction with their passion, but it's not putting food on the table. They have to do both. And most people who pull the trigger and leave the full-time normal job to do their passion full-time, almost all of them fail. It has nothing to do with their quality. Not at all. It's just they can't get themselves out there. The reason why media and the entertainment industry is so terrible is because independents, where all the talent is, are unable to talk to anybody because professional companies will specifically not talk to you. And it's just a vicious cycle, and that's why media sucks.
How do you deal from your own experience? How do you deal with that? What made you so special that you actually did it?
Well, for me, it was two parts. Like, I finally found, after a lot of research, I finally found the right company that would work with me and support me correctly. It's still incredibly difficult, but I also didn't have a choice. The things that got me discharged from the Army make it nearly impossible for me to work a normal job. So it's kind of like writing or nothing. So the boat got burned down behind me. There's no way for me to go back across the ocean. Yeah. So I'm writing full time now.
I think you point out something really interesting. I always said, we kind of break down completely, and if we feel like our world is ending when something devastating happens. But if that hadn't happened for you, do you think you wouldn't be writing right now, or doing everything that you're doing as an author?
I would still be writing. I'm going to write forever. But no, yeah. If that had not happened, I probably would not be where I am right now. And I will add one thing. If you are really good with social media, if you know how to really work the digital world, your odds of success are actually have skyrocketed. I don't know how to do that stuff. When I first was doing it full time, I'm thinking like newspapers, magazine ads, and it's just like people today, what's a newspaper? So my advertising thoughts are like 20 years out of date. So I have to hire people to do that for me. If you're awesome with that stuff, then a lot of the expense is gone because you can do it yourself.
Yeah, of course. I mean, now with this technology, everything is just AI and social media, and technology is just taking over. So yeah, we need to catch up with that if you're not that, tech savvy. I know you're available for 30 minutes and I'm keeping track of time, but so I'm going to the end and I want to ask you a couple of questions that I think are very important. What would you tell someone who feels like an important chapter of their life has just ended and doesn't know who they are anymore?
I would say that would mainly be a good time for self-reflection, because you might end up discovering who you really were all the time. And don't be afraid to talk to somebody, like a therapy or something like that. Like there's still a stigma with therapy and things like that, but talking to a therapist on a regular basis is actually a phenomenal way to release some of that stuff and to have somebody help guide you on that journey of self-discovery.
Right. Is that something from, for you being in the military, do you still carry a little bit of that identity, or you think it was just a phase of your life?
Well, I'll always carry that identity. In some ways, I'll always think of myself as a soldier after like 22 years. It's not who I am. It's part of who I am now, and it always will be.
What experiences shape who you became, Richard?
I'd say all of them. I mean, we are a culmination of every experience we've had throughout our entire lives, even little tiny things, really big things. I mean, there were a lot of things that happened during deployments when I was a lot younger that kind of shaped how I think about things. But then there's a lot of small stuff too, like the people you meet. You know, everything kind of comes together.
I think your story is just amazing. I mean, I think you're an amazing writer. I'm going to be honest, I do my research, but because of limited time, I can tell you, I haven't finished any book. but I read a little bit of what the book is about, and it's very intriguing. I think it has an amazing hook, all of them. And I'm not really, I mean, my genre is not fantasy, but when it's good, it really attracts me too. I think you have done an amazing job using, whatever struggles, setbacks that you had in life to be who you are today. And I think that's a lesson to learn for everyone, whoever is out there trying to make it. So I just want to thank you, because I know you have, your time is valuable. If they want to find you besides your website, besides your website, is there any way that they can find you somewhere? If they want to talk to you, they want to reach out to you?
Well, my Instagram is at Richard Spegal Books. That's where I am on social media. And my Facebook, again, is my name, Richard Spegal. But the stuff on my social media is funneled from the website. My website has a phenomenal amount of content. Each book has a movie trailer. I mean, the website is amazing. So that would always be where I would direct people.
And just to make sure, I wanted to tell the audience, so how many books so far? And what's the book that you're actually focusing on right now? So anyone who wants to go and get it and know more about you.
Well, I've got 6 out right now. And I would, recommend that people start with the first one. When you're reading a series, you got to start with book 1. And I got two different things I'm doing. So each one has a book 1. So, do that. Don't read book 3, because that's just silly. Read the first one first.
So, Richard, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your experiences, your journey, and your perspective. Today's conversation reminds us that sometimes the chapters we never planned become the ones that shape us the most. Our identities aren't fixed, right? And they continue to evolve through the experiences we live and the stories we choose to tell ourselves. So thank you everyone for listening. Remember, life isn't defined only by the big milestones. It's often the little wild experiences that shape who we become. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow the podcast, leave a review, and share with someone who will enjoy these conversations. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing your own little wild experiences.